Welcome. Welcome to another episode of Fresh Green Blessings, reading the Judeo-Christian Bible through a Buddhist lens with Mother Earth eyes. I'm Parson Michael here from Sacred Ground in Columbus, Ohio. And today we're going to be working with one of the Psalms. Let's see, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, Psalm 127. And we'll also be working with a bit of Mark, the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5. In this program, the idea is that this is a Bible study, and the idea is that this is hopefully a Bible study that opens our spirits, opens our hearts, opens our souls, and opens our minds, and even a little bit opens our bodies, without taking a closed or narrow view of the biblical text. So we engage the Bible prayerfully, meditatively. We'll be utilizing an ancient practice called Lectio Divina. I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. And we invite you to stay with us for the next hour and a half and see what happens. And everything we do, as always, with Sacred Ground is invitational. Oh, there's my singing bowl. And Sacred Ground, we've been around in various forms. We used to call ourselves the BCMC, the Buddhist-Christian Mother Earth Church. We now call ourselves Sacred Ground. Been around in different forms since 2009. And what we are dedicated to is watering beneficial seeds within ourselves, hopefully within you, within our communities, within our country, within our world, within our Mother Earth. And we do that grounded by the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, but also drawing from the teachings of Buddhism, Christianity, and earth-centered spirituality. Our special focus here with Fresh Green Blessings is on Christian tradition, but depending upon the day, we may draw from a Buddhist text or we may not, and so we bring that in as well sometimes. Right now I'm going to begin with a Tibetan singing bowl, inviting the bowl to sound. And for those of you who are regulars, you know the routine. The invitation is to simply enjoy the sound of the bell. What a weirdly simple invitation. To enjoy the sound of the truck going down the street that you may be able to hear. There'll probably be a train going by in a few minutes that you'll hear that. And right now, to enjoy yourself, to enjoy this moment, and to enjoy this sound of the singing bowl. You may also hear some birds singing outside. I know I just heard a motorcycle, I think it was, going up the street. You might hear Cookie there in the background. And of course, the sounds at your home or wherever you are as you watch. Long ago, as an undergraduate, I studied perceptual psychology under the late Dr. Peter Beckett. And it was a great opportunity to be a young person in my late teens, early 20s, looking at perception. And I've just appreciated more with the passing of years, because how we experience everything is related to how we perceive things. So with that, I like to begin each session of Fresh Green Blessings in a meditative state. For some of you, depending upon your way of thinking, this might be more of a prayerful state. For others, prayer doesn't make sense to them, and they'll say, oh, it's just meditation. Well, it doesn't really matter, tomato, what labels you want to put on these things. But to get us to a place of center and connection. With that, I invite you to become, if you're not already, aware of your body. Notice this body that is part of you. It's not all of you, but it's part of you, and it's right here with you right now. You might notice the weight of your legs even as you're sitting. You might notice the heaviness of your arms. You might begin to feel a place where there's some tension or some tightness, some stiffness. And here's something else that we all share: breath. I invite you to notice your in-breath and your out-breath. You might imagine that in-breath coming up the front of your body and that out-breath passing down your spine, reaching your tailbone, and then the in-breath coming up, a little taller with that, out-breath a little more relaxed, especially in the shoulders. In, out. In, out. I'm going to invite you, you might want to close your eyes. You might want to just lower your gaze. If you're watching this right now, you'll see I have my eyes closed. I want to invite you to envision something else. Envision a helium balloon on a piece of string, and imagine that that's taped right to the back of your head, that string. So it's really not a strong force or anything, but just a gentle upward invitation. So often we don't think of that neck as part of the spine, but it's all there, part of the spinal column. From your tailbone to the tip of your top of your head. And just imagine that balloon just doing its work. Nothing forced here, just imagine it. Let those shoulders relax. It's oftentimes a place of tension for people. Maybe wiggle your fingers, just aware of your hands. And breathe in. And out. Breathing deeply. And slowly. Breathing with calmness. Feeling refreshed. In. Out. Deep. Slow. Calm. refresh. Calm, refresh. Aware, smile. And if you wish, you can give a little smile there. It's up to you. Aware, smile. And now just a moment or two of silence. Once again, welcome. I'm noticing the sound of the furnace, so I'm going to turn the thermostat down for a second. I will not take long on this. That should be popping off then in a moment. And we're going to move towards our readings now. We're going to start with the psalm, a very short psalm today. And I'm going to read it slowly. And Thich Nhat Hanh says, with any sacred text, you don't have to concentrate hard. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to make sure I understand every bit of it. Just the invitation is to be like the earth with a gentle rain falling on you. Just let it kind of come right down upon you and soak in. And so with that, Psalm 127, and this one I'm reading is from the New Revised Standard Version, and in a moment I'll read from the King James Version. And to just kind of up the ante for myself in terms of presence, I'm going to invite the bell once again to sound. Because again, how I experience this text, it will depend upon what I bring to it. Psalm 127, God's blessing in the home. A song of ascents of Solomon. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord guards the city, the guard keeps watch in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil. For he gives sleep to his beloved. Sons are indeed a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the sons of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. And now the King James Version. Psalm 127. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh, but in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he giveth his beloved sleep. Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. Oh, someone's telling us, looks like maybe Jackie, maybe in Illinois, happy to catch this live. And you're welcome in the chat to check in, say hello, and we'll have opportunities if people wish to share as well. So you're welcome to share in the live chat. You're also, if you're watching this as a recording, you're welcome to put your chats, your comments there, because others will go back. We go back and look those over sometimes. So yeah, try to make this as interactive as we can. One of the things that is interesting to me is, I've mentioned here before, I think, the word epistemology, our way of knowing. And I have friends who all have very different, not all, but many of them have very different ways of knowing. Some of them identify as Buddhist, some of them identify as Christian. Some of them are kind of like me, where they see themselves as a melding of traditions. Some people see themselves as humanist or agnostic or atheist. We have all these different ways of understanding ourselves in relation to the world. One of the things that I really appreciate about the Bible, and the Psalms in particular, is that oftentimes we get this way of thinking that may not be common in some of the circles we're in. Listen to these words. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord guards the city, the guard keeps watch in vain. I think we have, in modernity, a very anthropocentric worldview. We feel like we're the ones in charge of everything. Some people who are spiritual or religious will allow for the sacred at work, but oftentimes people will poo-poo that kind of worldview. And sometimes those who have that sacred view will speak with such surety as if they understand everything about how all that works. And I haven't yet found the human being who understands how it all works. So if you're the one, congratulations. But I think it's interesting. I think it's fascinating how we interact in different ways with reality and our limited understandings. I'm always drawn to the sky. You know, I love the fact that if I put up my fingers and I create this little tiny speck to look through, that there are galaxies up. If I aim my hand up at the sky and just pick this little tiny dot of the sky, there are galaxies and galaxies in that. You know, not solar systems, galaxies full of trillions of stars. we are so small. I was just talking with a dear friend this afternoon, and he happens to be an older gentleman. And we were talking about the deep value of humility, being humble about what we know and recognizing how little we know. I get such juice out of this. The word humble, the roots are related to humor and humus, so the soil. So connecting to the earth and connecting to our playfulness, our humor. You know, the person who is so self-serious, who thinks they have it all figured out, no matter what their worldview may be, that is always a little troubling to me. That's fine if that's if you got it, hey, great, good for you. But like, I want to invite myself into a humility. And so I love this idea that the psalm is giving of, you know, those guys working on that house over there? If the Lord's not building that house, they're laboring in vain. What? That's from a 2025 perspective in the United States of America. That's wacky. That's crazy wacky. And I love it. And I found this writing and I want to share it with you. There's a little comment on this psalm, and this comes from the Interpreter's Bible. It's a whole series, and I happen to have the series. And this series is my favorite Bible commentary. You know, when I was in seminary, there's all these different collections you can draw from, and some of them are, you know, really get into the nitty gritty of each word and that sort of thing. I love the Interpreter's Bible. This came out in this particular volume, volume 4, which has the Psalms and Proverbs, came out in 1955. So these things came out in the 50s, and they have such a richness to them because they draw from poetry and other sources. Anyway, I'll just read these words to you and just let you muse on them. This is in reference to that idea of, I'll say it again, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Here's what this commentator says. It is not enough for architects and town planners and social reformers to take a site, cut it up, and build on it ideal dwellings. There may be the best of paper schemes, but if the true nature of man is ignored, even the finest of social services will lead to frustration. There may seem little difference between the man who builds in a spirit of self-confidence and self-sufficiency and one who remembers that he could do nothing if the material were not provided and he were not endowed with the ability to build. Yet that difference is the one thing that matters. This particular commentator says, plans made and executed in a purely secular spirit will never satisfy human needs. I want to read a little more of what he says on the next page. I'm reading little excerpts, little sentences here. And this is 1955. So we're past World War II. We're past Korea, or America's involvement in Korea. But the Vietnam War has not yet started. And again, remember, he's saying this purely secular worldview and challenging it. He says, We have progressed so far with military science that we are afraid of the weapons we have devised and shrink to think not only of the destruction of enemies, but of boomerang effects upon ourselves. Is it not further proof that secular solutions are no solutions? That instead of leading us through to peace and prosperity, they raise new fears and problems? Military demands are like the great idols of which we read in childhood days, huge revolting idols that were drawn through crowded streets and beneath whose wheels innocent children were cast by frenzied and superstitious parents. If we had attended to the things of the Spirit as carefully as we have attended to guns and gases, battleships and bombers, we might have found ourselves with more friends and fewer foes. We might have found so much less suspicion and hate in the world that instead of failing to make peace, statesmen and stateswomen would have been able to lead us confidently in the work of reconstruction. This writer, I should see what his name is so I can share that with you. This writer is certainly writing from a Christian perspective, but I also want to say, at least in this particular section, let me see if I can give you who this was. Frank H. Ballard. I don't know of him, but he wrote the exposition on this. He's not being particular, at least in this writing, about, it has to be Christian. But he's saying, if we have a wider view, an openness to sacrality, what might happen? I know of some, I'm Slovak American and Irish American. I know of some Slovak traditions that have to do with household spirits. So this is pre-Christian. And one of the things that traditionally people did in Slovakia was when a couple was getting married and they were getting their first house, they would have a nice urn or pot, and they would take scrapings of ash from the bride's family oven and from the groom's family oven. They'd mix that ash together. They'd put droplets of it in each of the corners of the house. And then they'd wrap that urn in a nice scarf. And then they would break it and bury it at the foot of the house. I, of course, don't know. But if I were to guess, if a couple were to do a ritual like that, and what they're doing there is they're inviting the household spirits of their own families into their new home. And they're also inviting the old household spirits, if there were any, to depart. But I think if a couple could bring that kind of ritual and sense of things greater than themselves to that experience, that couple might have a little better chance of living rather happily together. You can disagree with that or agree with that. If anyone has any comments, um, I actually I welcome some thoughts. So I'll take a moment and see if anyone has any further thoughts on that. And just take a moment. I want to share one other thing that I learned about this psalm. They speak of one's children being like quivers. I'm sorry, being like arrows and a quiver full of them. And it says, he shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. And you think of enemies at the gate and you might think of like, oh, some battle's about to take place. Well, it turns out that they know from history that there were court proceedings that would take place right near the near the gates. Oh, and we do have some comments there from Jackie. Not sure about living spirits, but likes the idea of a family blessing. And thank you for that, Jackie, too, because I think that's part of the important work, and something that we try to do with Sacred Ground is figure out what works for you and what is appropriate for you. And if you happen to be in a relationship with someone, then there's that work of figuring that out together. And, Ollie and I, we do the Sunday programs here together. Ollie and I have a lot of differences in our views of the sacred and all of that. And that's fine. And as I said, I have friends across the spectrum, and I don't need anyone to think exactly the way I do. I'll even comment on this. I think maybe people of like pre-boomers might even be better at this. Like my mom, she's a Depression era person. She would go to church. She thought differently about God than she knew some of her friends did who were in the next pew, but she didn't really worry about that. There was a sense of community, and she didn't feel like we all had to agree about every little thing. Now, in a different church, that might not have been possible. She was Presbyterian, and they weren't, her particular Presbyterian church was not super strict or whatever. And I think even in the more, traditional churches that were fairly strict, let's say Roman Catholic Church that I'm familiar with, I think there was a lot of variety in how people saw things. And so kind of just allowing for, and I think that's where we get in trouble. It's where we feel like everybody has to think the way I do about this. So Yeah, this ritual, we did this ritual with the with the ashes, Ollie and I. Somebody else may also be of Slovak descent. They might like, no, I would never want to do that, and that's fine too. So I think that's part of the invite. At least that's part of the invite that I feel. Yeah. So, or sharing something here. What was I sharing? Oh, happy is the one who has his quiver full of the arrows of their children. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies at the gate. I read this is not about the enemies at the gate, like, oh, there's about to be a battle, but that they would have court proceedings right at the inner gate. And if you had the youth who could speak for you, especially as you got older, things might go better. So just interesting, like these little things that they speak of. And I also invite you, like, I sometimes have spoken here of my Aunt Mary and Uncle Dudley. They happen to have not had children, but we were theirs. I mean, I'm so connected to them, and they just took on the nephews and nieces. I know other people, friends of mine who don't have kids, who their friends' kids are, maybe they're not connected to their family, but their friends' kids are super important to them. I'm thinking of my one buddy in particular here in Columbus. The invitation here is that connection with youth supports us into the future. So again, just a lovely, lovely message with that. I'm going to move on because we have a longer reading in Mark today, and I want to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to move on to Mark, but before I do, I'll do a little tiny bit of yoga to just invite us to transition with that. And as always, if you'd like to join in as well, you're welcome. And if that's not what you wish to do, that's fine too. So I'm going to move the camera a little bit so this should work. And I'll show the yoga. Just for a couple of minutes. Make sure I can be seen here. Looks like I will. If you wish, I invite you to sit on the floor. You might want to sit cross-legged. I have a problem with this one knee, so I will often bring in a pillow to give me a little support under that left knee. So I invite you to just sit and breathe. And again, it might be a bit of a challenge even to sit up here. I have a zafu, a meditation cushion under me. You might want to have a pillow under you if you'd like to sit and join. If you're watching this as a recording, you can just pause and come back in a second. And notice your breath. You might want to bring your chest up a little bit and down. And I invite you to raise your arms up. And breathe out, bring your arms down. Up. Wiggle those fingers and down. We're going to bring the arms up. And this time, your left hand on your right knee and around. And I invite you on the in-breath to sit up a little taller. And on the out-breath to don't force it, but just twist a little more. In taller. Out twist. In taller. Out twist. And on the next in-breath, we're going to bring those hands back up. In and up. Out and down. You might want to have an audible breath here. In and up. Wiggle those fingers. Out and down. Now we're going to go to the other side. In and up. Out, and the right hand on the left knee. And the left hand behind. In, up a little taller. Out, just back a little bit more. In, up a little taller. Out, back a little bit more. Don't force it too much here. In, up a little taller. Out, back a little bit more. And now in and up. And down. So now you might want to bring your 2 feet in front of you. And if you have a pillow, you could put this right here, but you could just imagine a pillow here. And I invite you to kind of go up and over. You don't have to reach your toes, but just get a nice little stretch in those hamstrings. And hold. And breathe. And breathe. And one more breath. And then up and over again. And I invite you to stand. And at this point, I invite you to put your legs a little wider than waist level. And cross your arms and bring them up. A nice big X. And wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, stretch out that back, and then back. And once more, maybe with a smile, wiggle those toes, wiggle those fingers, back, and once more. We do this little bit of mindful movement during Fresh Green Blessings, and part of that is just making sure we're connected to the body. The body is part of us, and we can get so caught in words, we get caught in emotion, we get caught in our thoughts, and we forget that we are this body, you know? Yeah, go ahead, just hit this, not hit, but tap your, you're this living being. You are this living being. And I don't know, there's so much that almost invites us to forget that. I'm now going to read a story that's probably familiar to many of you. And I'll invite the bell to sound before I read this one. The story of the man possessed by legions and how those legions then enter a herd of swine. Enjoy the bell. This is Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 20. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with a chain. For he had often been restrained with shackles and chains, but the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now there on the hillside a great herd of swine was feeding. And the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine. Let us enter them." So he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine. And the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea. The swineherds ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the demoniac sitting there, clothed and in his right mind. The very man who had had the legion. And they were afraid. Those who had seen what had happened to the demoniac and to the swine reported it. Then they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed by demons begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus refused and said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed. As many of you know, we draw, as we did with the Psalms, we draw from multiple interpretations. And so now the King James Version, Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 20. And I'll try to read this mindfully, prayerfully. And they came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. And when Jesus was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces. Neither could any man tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not." For he said unto him, "Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit." And he asked him, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. And he besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country. Now there was there, nigh unto the mountains, a great herd of swine feeding. And all the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave. And the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. There were about 2,000, and were choked in the sea. And they that fed the swine fled, and told it in the city and in the country, and they went out to see what it was that was done. And they come to Jesus and see him that was possessed with the devil, and had the legion, sitting and clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And they that saw it told them how it befell to him that was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swine. And they began to pray him to depart out of their coasts. And when he was come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devil prayed him that he might be with him. Howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but saith unto him, Go home to thy friends, and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee. And he departed and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him. And all men did marvel. And we'll have one more reading, that beginning of chapter 5 of Mark, verses 1 through 20. This is from the Gospels, a new translation by Sarah Rudin. This translation, which came out in the year 2021. Then they came to the opposite shore of the sea, to the region of the Gerasenoi. As soon as Jesus got out of the boat, a man coming from among the tombs, who was under the power of an unclean spirit, met him. He made his home among the tombs, and by this time nobody could restrain him, not even with a chain. In the past, he had often been restrained with fetters and chains, but the chains had been wrenched apart by him, and the fetters shattered, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Now, throughout the night and day, he stayed among the tombs and in the mountains, screaming and mangling himself with stones. But when he saw Iesus from far off, he ran to him and groveled at his feet, screamed at the top of his voice, and said, What's your business with me, Iesus, son of the highest God? I call on you in God's name. Don't torture me. Iesus, you see, had said to him, Unclean spirit, leave this man. Now Iesus asked him, What's your name? And he said to him, My name's Legion. That's how many of us there are. And he pleaded with Iesus fervently not to dispatch the demons out of the region. In that place, on the slope of a hill, was a large herd of pigs grazing. So the demons pleaded with Iesus, saying, Send us into the pigs. Let us go into them. He gave them his permission. And the unclean spirits went out of the man and into the pigs. And the herd There were around 2,000 animals, barreled down the crag into the sea, and in the sea they drowned. Then the herders ran away and brought the news to the city and the countryside. And people went to see what had happened. And they came to Iesus and saw the man who had been possessed by demons. But now he was sitting with clothes on and was clear-headed, though he'd had a legion of demons in him. And the people were frightened. Those who'd seen it told them all about what had happened to the demon-possessed man and also about the pigs. And they began to plead with Iesus to go away out of their district. As he was boarding the boat, the man who'd been possessed by demons pleaded with him, wanting to go along with him. But Iesus didn't allow him to, instead telling him, "Get along to your home and family and tell them everything the Master's done for you and how he took pity on you." And the man went away and proceeded to spread the word in the 10 cities about everything Iesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed. I'm going to allow a couple of moments of silence, and then I'm going to attempt what I would call Lectio Divina with the New Revised Standard Version. And with that, I'm going to read some of the words, and I'm going to allow other words to come. And what I'm about to do, I invite you to try yourself sometime, and I also invite any feedback that you'd like to give after this. I use the word extemporaneous to describe this process, and I think another word might be spontaneous or semi-spontaneous. I think a little bit about it ahead of time, but I try not to overthink it. I might read some of the King James as well. And always, night and day, always,